Welcome back to Giants Latest. It is time to talk about Brian Daboll. We have talked extensively about Joe Shane this week, but it's time. It's Daboll's time now. So he spoke at the NFL owners meetings this week, just like Joe Shane, which is why we have spoken a lot about him. But Daboll gave us some interesting nuggets this week that I thought were worth sharing. So let's talk about it. So first of all, he was asked if he's made any decisions whether or not he's going to call plays in 2025. He called plays for the first time in 2024. Didn't go that well. And then apparently during his end of season meeting with John Mara, where he was, laying out the plan and future vision for this football team, allegedly he said that he was the one who brought up maybe he wouldn't call plays this year, but John Mara kind of threw him under the bus and said, no, I was the one who brought it up. Very interesting how that works. But either way, he said that he's going to make a decision by the end of training camp, so it'll be ready for preseason. So I think that's better than waiting until week one, because if he decides that Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, is going to do it, then it gives Kafka a little more time. Now, Kafka called plays for the Giants for 2 years, so obviously he does have experience doing that. And in my opinion, Daboll's not going to give it up. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who is willing to admit to weaknesses or struggles, and him going back to not calling plays, just I don't see it happening. I would prefer that. I would rather it go to Mike Kafka, because I think Daboll has some things to work on before he can be a good enough head coach in this league to also take on play calling. So I think he should just give it to Kafka, but I'll believe it when I see it. So he was asked a lot about bringing in two veteran quarterbacks, what they liked about Russ Wilson and Jameis Winston and why they brought them in, et cetera, et cetera. The one thing that him and Joe Shane were both very consistent on this week was the focus of Russ Wilson, specifically his production. So, Joe Shane was more calling out the stats that in all of his years except for 2, Russ Wilson has thrown for 20 touchdowns. In the 11 games that he played in 2025, he threw for 16. So a lot of talk about production, which obviously is something that the Giants quarterback room has been missing for the last few years. So not surprising to me that was a big focus, but I did think it was interesting that when Daboll specifically talked about Russ Wilson and what he liked about him, he said, they talk about the whole he's a leader and he's won a lot in the NFL and blah, blah, blah. He said he takes care of the ball, which I thought was fascinating because they also signed Jameis Winston, who does not take care of the ball. So obviously, I think that points to the reason why Russ Wilson is going to be the starter, and they're going to see how Jameis does. But I just thought it was really interesting that was, one of the things that he called out, because he did talk about some other things that he could have just left it with. He's a great leader. He's very productive on the field. He throws a lot of touchdowns. He's got a great deep ball, which is something that Daboll also said. And then on top of that, he's also like, yeah, no, he doesn't turn the ball over. So that was interesting. Obviously, we know that was a huge gripe that Daboll has had with some of the previous Giants quarterbacks, between Drew Lock and Daniel Jones, who both had a lot of turnovers. Again, makes me scratch my head as to why they brought in Jameis Winston, knowing that he has a turnover issue. But like I said, I think that Daboll is not exactly I think he thinks very highly of himself, in the sense, and everyone should to some degree, right? But when you're wrong, fix things. So my concern here is that he has this complex about him that, well, he fixed Daniel Jones' turnovers, so he's going to be able to do it with Jameis Winston. And like I have said before, God bless. If you can do it, love ya, would be amazing. Do I expect him to do that? Not necessarily. What I expect him to do is tone down the offense if Jameis Winston is in the game, like he did with Daniel Jones in 2022, and say, we're going to focus heavy on a run game. You're not going to throw the ball that much, and we're going to take advantage of the fact that you can run, like he did with Jones, and say, we're going to take less chances on you throwing the ball. So I hope that's not the case, because I think the thing that's so fun about Jameis Winston is that he wings the ball down the field, and, he's going to give you explosive plays when he throws it to the right person, and he's going to give you turnovers. It is what it is. So I'm very curious their thought process behind that and how they plan to go about that, especially when you have Joe Shane being like, well, we brought in two veterans because we have such a history of dealing with having to go to our second and third string quarterbacks because of injuries. So, just very interesting. Anyway, so he said that he hasn't really gotten the guys in the building yet. He hasn't gotten an opportunity to really sit down with Russ and go through, the offense and what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do and how he wants to play to Wilson's strengths and stuff like that. He said he gets the players in the building for the first time on April 21st, and then from there is when they will get started on that. So I have hopes. as I should. I think we all should, knowing that we're going from the quarterback room that we went to last year to this year, and there's potential to be a rookie in there. So I still have a little bit of faith in Dable that he can bring out a good offense. And I really hope, and he mentioned some of the speedsters that they have on the outside. He mentioned Theo Johnson, of course, Malik Neighbors. Like, he has weapons for his quarterback now. So now it's up to the offensive line to block, and it's up to the quarterback to pull the trigger and make those throws. So I hope that Russ Wilson can do it. Let's move over to what he said about the defense, because, he was asked about Adebo and Holland and kind of why he brought them in and why, them over other players, etc. So he spoke very highly of Holland. He said that he loves him. He watched his tape going all the way back to college, and he loved him coming out of college. So he's excited to have him on the team. And he said he's an instinctive player and crafty veteran. And one thing that we notice when Joe Schoen has talked about defensive players is their instincts and ball skills. So Dable, it sounds like they are, they're on the same page with a lot of things. Dable said the same thing, right? That he's instinctive. So he loves the Holland edition. Let's hope that Shane Bowen over here, our DC, can make the most out of adding Holland to the team. When he talked about Adebo, he said he's played in both systems and he's a good man corner. So again, Shane Bowen, take advantage of that. Now, I want to keep talking about the defense for a second, because if you guys have ever listened to Brian Dable's post games, even pre games, he gives you nothing. His post games are some of the worst and most boring I've ever listened to in my life. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of us as fans, Daniel Jones was the same way. And I don't blame them. Like, I get it, especially when you're losing. Like, I don't want to hear you say anything because everything you say is BS, right? I don't care what you have to say, because whatever happened at practice is not translating on the field. So enough of this, we had a good practice week, I don't know what happened. Figure it out, bro. Come on, you're going into year 4. So the fact that he gave multiple sentences about Travis Hunter. He's not the only one. Joe Schoen also talked very highly about Travis Hunter. Now, I understand it's draft season and we have to take everything with a grain of salt. But I still think it's very interesting that he said what he said. And the reason why I think it's the most interesting was because he was asked about the quarterbacks, and they're always mum on the quarterbacks. And a lot of the times they are mum about a lot of players, right? Like in Hard Knocks, we saw that they loved they loved Malik Neighbors, and they loved Jaden Daniels and whatever. They love some of the players in Hard Knocks. And you don't always get that side to it from a public perspective. We don't always see that. So the fact that they both mentioned Travis Hunter, they spoke very highly about him. When it came to the quarterbacks, it was very, we're still doing our evaluations. Dable doesn't go to the pro days. He prefers the private group practices because, they're better one-on-one and things like that. This is what he said about Travis Hunter, verbatim. There's a lot of tape. It's really remarkable what he has done and the ability to perform at that level, not really getting a rest. He's been a fun player to evaluate and to meet and talk with. He's a heck of a player. They've met with Shedeur Sanders 100 times. They met with Cam Ward. They probably have met with Jackson Dart, among other people. I don't know if they had a top 30 visit with Abdul Carter yet. I believe that is going to start to pick up now after the owners' meetings, but Travis Hunter is the only player that we got anything. And not only was it not just like he's a good football player, I like the tape. Remarkable. He's at that level. He's a heck of a player, fun to evaluate, to meet and talk to. Dable doesn't ever say things like that. And look, I don't think that means that they're going to do whatever they can to get Travis Hunter, that he's their guy. I think that if he's there at 3 and Shedeur Sanders is there at 3, I think they're taking Travis Hunter. And I think that's the most that you can get from taking these little tidbits, right? Like, they're all trying to throw everyone off this time of year, and I get it. It is what it is. But all I'm saying is don't be surprised if they take Travis Hunter at 3, especially over Shedeur Sanders, because I think that Shane and Dable love him. And I think if you're Bowen and Kafka, you also love him. So it's going to be very interesting. It's draft month. 'Tis the season. A lot more to come your way, so hit that subscribe button.